So, yes, Boss Man has gone on holiday. And because he's gone, we were able to hack his laptop and create this. This is our new promotion, Sargon. So while he's enjoying his holiday in the US, we are going to have a 50% off all subscription tiers, including Gold, for the next 3 months. So enter code Sargon, and yes.
Well, I know Carl's away for today. Has he gone for like 2 weeks now?
Yes, about 2 weeks.
Oh, fair play.
Yes, he's going to be promoting us in the US. So I thought what we could do is we could have a chat about some of the fantastic stuff that we got going on at the Lotus Eaters. So should we start with you, Josh?
Of course.
Well, what is it that you do for us then?
Well, I've been doing the Contemplations series, which has been a mainstay of the website for quite some time now. It goes back a couple of years. And of course, the series on our website.
Because you're like employee 1 or 2 or something, aren't you? So
2, I think it
2.
was.
Josh is one of the early prototypes.
I was.
Right.
Yeah.
We hadn't yet perfected what a Lotus Eaters presenter should be by that point.
There was some bugs with the speech where there's umming and erring in between sentences that weren't worked out in my sort of generation, but that has since been worked out with later presenters. But,
thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
But yes, this is my series, and it's very good, obviously, because it's made by yours truly. And it, being a bit more serious now, though, it is kind of like my life's work, in that I have poured a little bit of my heart and soul into making lots of digestible, accessible, sort of academic level content,
right,
whilst also not being really annoying and jargony and inaccessible. So the idea is that I'm trying to deliver university level education, although some of it is just entertaining.
And the reason I like this, because I do like this one, the reason I like it is because you ask some bloody interesting questions and you never know where you're going to go with next. So you've done things like, for example, are cities the problem? Which I liked. For some reason, back in 2021, you decided to do one on how to subvert an election.
Yes, there was absolutely no reason for that in that specific year.
It wasn't particularly topical, as far as I can tell.
No, obviously, because as we knew at that point, all elections were, the most secure ever.
Fortified, very rigorous, strictly adhered to all of the rules.
Yes, but it was very interesting because it looked at it from the perspective of, if you are a malevolent individual, how would you go about interfering in the democratic processes? And surprisingly easy, actually.
Josh tried it himself.
I wish.
And I started to tie 1 or 2 of these together because you did one on are stereotypes valid at some point.
I think that was with Harry. Wasn't
it? That was one of the early ones. So I haven't watched that one yet. And then you did one more recently.
Have I been here long enough that I would be on one of the early ones? I suppose so.
As in before me.
Well, there have been I think we're getting to 1155 soon.
Almost getting to 150.
The earliest ones are with Hugo.
They are,
Shout out to Hugo.
I was going to get onto that. I've got a list of Dan's questions here, so I'm preempting them already. But
I'm a little bit jealous that it's the longest running, because my epoch is the second longest running.
It is, yeah. It is a close second as well.
There's some measuring going on here, folks.
But yes, it's worth mentioning, of course.
No, the reason I was going to bring up the stereotypes thing is because you did that one on stereotypes, and then recently I did one with you on the economics of crime.
Yes.
Where basically we went through crime by country. And basically what we found out from that is that basically the crime statistics prove all of your stereotypes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
categorically.
I don't know if I remember the one that we did on stereotypes. I think the conclusion was something along the lines of, not every stereotype is going to be right 100% of the time. Probably more like 90% of the time.
Well, what they are is just, it's a means of unconsciously basically totting up statistics, percentages, likelihoods of outcomes, aren't they? And because your unconscious mind is very, very good at dealing with large amounts of information, as opposed to your conscious mind, where it's difficult to deal with large sets of data, it actually does a reasonably good job, and that quite often gets overlooked.
So is that why you've got the midwit bell curve, where basically stupid people get stuff right and really smart people get stuff right, and then the midwits,
the Dunning-Kruger effect,
just enough?
Well, there are some questions about that. I think actually it's a bit, it wouldn't be a bell curve in my mind. I think normally idiots are more certain than actual people who know what they're talking about, because people who know what they're talking about tend to know the limitations of their own presumptions and the amount of uncertainty to provide. So normally, if someone's very well informed, it still kind of beats the bottom of the bell curve.
But it's the midwits. They're the problem. They're the ones who think they know something because they watched the Channel 4 documentary on it, or whatever it is.
From my understanding of it, the midwits are people who've been educated enough to be educated to completely distrust their instincts and completely throw their instincts aside, when the person who is educated beyond that, at the higher end of the bell curve, probably also doesn't always trust his instincts, but knows enough to know that his instincts are right more often than not. You
kind of need to look at the juxtaposition between sort of tradesmen and university students. Like, tradesmen are very practically minded. They're very good at what they do.
Also, not necessarily at the bottom of the bell curve.
No, of course not. But then you go to university and you've got to be educated into these stupid ideas. I mean, it's the phrase that some ideas are so stupid, you've got to be an academic to believe them. And there's a lot of truth.
This is actually another one that you and I did together when we were looking at whether artists and being creative was inherently left-wing, like so many people, including you, Jordan. I know you're watching this. Like to suggest that just being creative, being open to experience, automatically means that you're more left-wing than anybody else. And we looked into it and we found a magnificent article that you brought up by some Indian guy who said, no, creative people are just far more likely to have gone through the institutions that brainwash them into being left-wing in the first place. That makes far more sense.
Yes.
It's very true, yes. And also, there is the point that if you're industrious, you're more likely to be right-wing. And if you're industrious, you're more likely to succeed in whatever industry you go into. You can use the example of a band both me and Harry like called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which is a great name.
I don't think they're right-wing.
No, but they're really, really industrious, and they've been successful because of it, right? And it's a proof that industriousness
They've got, 24 albums out in the past
They released
11
5
years.
great albums in a year, so they did quite well. Yes. But do carry on.
No, I was just saying, a slew of interesting content on there. You put some out. What are some of your favourites then?
So, one of my favourites is the 2-part series on the origin of humanity that I did with Bo. This one, I put in a ridiculous amount of research.
I like that one. Yeah, that was good.
I'm listening to this at the moment. Very interesting.
Thank you very much. But yeah, I probably put in about 100 hours of research into this outside of work, on top of the research I did in work.
Right.
So I was reading research papers, looking at archaeological reports, all sorts of stuff. It's not necessarily my field, but I did do a lot of evolutionary psychology, and I'm a sort of bushcraft enthusiast.
So can I ask a question which we might need to edit for YouTube? But is the Out of Africa thing complete bollocks?
I don't think you need to censor that for YouTube.
I don't think YouTube.
It's far more complicated than that, because there are hominids outside of Africa millions of years ago. So to say human beings who came onto the scene at the sort of latest 300,000 years ago, to say that they're just out of Africa is a massive oversimplification, because some of our ancestors were already in Europe before we were there.
Because I don't know if you looked at this, but there was a thing going around Twitter about a month or two ago, which was basically throwing up genetic data of different groups, and it was basically sort of it was all the sort of the Northern Hemisphere type groups were basically on one arc down one side for the genetic data, and then it was sort of Africans and Aboriginals, which were just a different. I don't know the term, because I don't know.
I think it was
right. Yeah, okay.
It was sub-Saharan Africans and Aboriginals were the ones, because North Africans have more admixture with European, specifically more Southern European, because of the connection to the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah. So is that a thing? Is that real?
As in the difference between?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you can look at different human migrations through the human genome, so you can kind of make estimates based on the genealogical information as to when certain peoples migrated to where they are the so-called native inhabitants. And you can kind of work backwards alongside archaeological evidence, and they're complementary to one another.
Basically, we came to the conclusion that the out of Africa hypothesis is just not accurate enough.
Mm-hmm.
There might be very, very ancient hominid creatures with a single ancestor somewhere in the East African Rift Valley. But that's not the picture of modern humanity. It just doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's a very, very complicated tree. Say there's one ancestral mother from East Africa. It just doesn't, it doesn't work like that.
To kind of paint the picture a little bit, 1.8 million years ago, there was a Homo erectus, it was, living in Dmanisi in Georgia, who hadn't even discovered fire yet. And Georgia, of course, relatively close to Europe, isn't it? It's just south of the Caucasus Mountains.
Are we talking about the US state or the bit of bottom of Russia?
The part underneath Russia, of course.
Right, okay. But hang on, back then, were all the countries joined up, or was that... Is that even further back?
Oh, are you talking about the landmass all being connected?
Yes.
Eurasia and such?
Yes.
No, it's essentially the same. We're only talking,
it's more or less the same.
We're only talking a few 100,000 years at most. So.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, fine.
Was that at the point, just to correct me, was that at the point where there was still a land bridge between what's now the UK and Europe?
Almost certainly, I mean.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think that was a few... Was that within the last 10,000 years?
That would have gone, yeah.
There'd be one at the Bering Straits as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
Alaska
of
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, here's another thing, just because I find this whole thing very, very interesting to talk about. I've learned recently, I think a lot of Europeans have a much higher mix of Neanderthal in them than any other groups elsewhere, which is one of the things that separates us from other groups across the world. Africans don't have that.
No, apparently Asians have...
Denisovan.
Yes. But we don't really know anything about those guys because they just...
We do know bits and pieces. Right. I know that the Nepalese in particular have a large amount of Denisovan DNA, which actually helps with their ability to extract oxygen from the high altitudes. Like the genes that help them with that come from the Denisovans rather than from the Nepalese per se.
But then it just is more complicated. So there's anomalies as well, aren't there? It's like some people's, or lots of different types of human type creature, hominids, that have come and gone completely.
Yeah.
Completely risen up and then died out entirely.
Like, there was... I'm not being racist or anything, but there used to be like whole loads of, I have to be clear, just because you have to be so careful.
Might be too spicy.
You get like loads of different species of monkeys and stuff like that. I mean, presumably at one point there was just loads of different species of humans.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
like big ones, little ones, and
that's not controversial at all.
Oh, you never know.
My personal favourite is on the island of Flores in Indonesia. There are little 4-foot. Tiny cranial, like they had tiny brains, and yet they still made relatively sophisticated sort of Stone Age tools. And they were hunting tiny elephants. So in this sort of weird dystopian world,
tiny people hunting tiny elephants.
Well, to this day, you've got sort of giant people from northwestern Europe, or the Maasai people of Africa, and you've got really small pygmies in Papua New Guinea or something. To this day.
Yes. I think Josh and I are probably in the top 1% of tallest people in the world because of how tall we are.
Well, you are.
Well, Josh as well.
Thank you.
Josh is tall. You're sort of unnecessarily tall.
Josh is only like half an inch shorter than I.
Really?
Yeah. Is that the cut-off point for you? You're like, well, Josh is fine, but Harry, no.
Half an inch makes all the difference.
I'm 6'3".
Are you?
Oh, well.
Yes.
Oh. You seem taller.
No, I've got friends who are like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". I've met a man who's the brother of a friend of mine who's 7'1". It's ridiculous.
That's just debilitating.
That is unnecessary.
That's taking the piss at that point, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of difficult for him as well, being that tall. So let's not be insulting.
I wasn't insulting him. No, I mean,
I already called him
on a completely different note. Something that I really need to mention that's very important is I started off this series with Hugo. Some of the old timers, the long time watchers, poor Hugo, will remember Hugo.
Is that necessary?
Yeah.
Yes. We're painting a picture here. People only see us sat down.
Mm-hmm. But the first 40 episodes, me and him would take turns basically presenting to the other person. So he was integral to doing it. And before then, we were doing the weekend segments, which were before, the segments that would have gone out on the actual podcast channel on YouTube. And we would just talk about random stuff, like I talked about marks and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
It's like
one of the first introductions I had to this website was listening to the series the two-parter that you and Hugo did on the life of Marx, his actual biography. Very interesting.
Thank you very much. So yes, it was kind of born of that, and then we realized, well, why don't we make this a quality series that's on the website? Obviously, people have to pay to access it, but that means we can put lots of work into it and make it really good. And
so people do have to pay to access it, but they only have to pay £5 a month, which is notable. And if they use the code SARGON, then they get 50% off for the next 3 months while the boss is on holiday. He's not on holiday for 3 months. He's on holiday.
Carl doesn't know.
Yes.
And also, you can learn about lots of different topics, and it's not going to be woke like a university.
Yes.
And it's probably going to present the facts in a bit more of a unbiased way, because quite often I like to play devil's advocate. I don't like to tell you exactly what to think.
And it's just genuinely interesting stuff. So instead of, because I have this, because I quite like documentaries, and sometimes you'll be sat there and thinking, oh, okay, I put a documentary on. So you start scrolling through Netflix. And you look at the time and you think, oh, it's just going to be unbearably bloody woke, and it's just going to tell you about bloody
black Egyptians.
Yeah, and yes.
None of that.
Like how Nagubu built the pyramids.
and then I just think, okay, well, I'll put on a Contemplations instead, because it's like a documentary, but without the twattiness.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's even fun.
Yes.
Now, don't worry, there's still a hefty bit of twattiness in all of these.
I am in them, yeah.
Well, yeah. So what I wanted to come to, actually, is there's another one of yours, which I haven't watched yet, but it's on my list because I just noticed it, and it's all about prepping.
Oh, yes.
Now, the reason I bring that up is...
In fact, John, you can move on to the next one. I'll come back to the space one in a second.
All right, okay.
Here it is.
Yes. So, because, we found out last week that we all think about the Roman Empire all the time, but we didn't know that we all did, but we all do.
I mean, I knew it.
Yes. Well,
I thought it was
that
kind
everybody
of
else was thinking about it.
Well, I knew I was thinking about it.
Yeah, that's my point.
I thought we exchanged a look. When men just glance at one another, it's like Roman Empire. It's like a
me
nod.
and Bo sit opposite each other, and we quite often talk about the Roman Empire just offhand. It just comes up.
Mm. Well,
it's just easy to just stumble into a very complicated conversation about the sort of intricacies of Roman politics.
Yes, but the point is, we were all thinking it, and we didn't. Apart from you two, we didn't necessarily know we were all thinking about it. That's probably right. Which brings me on to prepping, because now surely this isn't only me. Right? Tell me if you all do this as well. I've never asked anyone this before, so I'm thinking that all men think this. But do you ever sit at home and think to yourself, if there was a zombie outbreak?
Yeah,
every day.
How would I fortify my house? And you look at the windows and you think, yeah, I could break up that shelving unit and do that, and then I could all that kind of stuff.
Well,
I've already got it figured out. Yeah,
I mean, it's not necessarily zombie apocalypse. When I look at Lampedusa at the moment, I think, okay, when they arrive, what do I do?
It could be a zombie outbreak or massively enrichment.
Yes, how do I avoid the enrichment getting through my front door?
Do you guys all do that as well?
Oh yeah, I've already got like a 10-point plan going. I'm ready for everything.
Oh yeah, because you start thinking it through. You start thinking, okay, well, in what order would I do things? So I've come to, first thing I'd do is fill up loads of water containers, because that's absolutely crucial.
Obviously, yeah.
Then I would do basic sort of home defense type stuff, and then I'd start thinking through, okay, do I? But this is the tricky thing. You need to work out whether it's a fast zombie invasion or a slow zombie invasion, as to whether you do a quick raid on the shops or not.
If it's the slow ones, you can kind of do a Shaun of the Dead. Sorry, Bo.
Yeah,
it's got fast twitch muscle fiber zombies.
Yes. Well, hang on. That sounds racist.
Well, the thing though, I always think about is the water. Unless you buy giant water butts that you can put hundreds of gallons in, you're just going to die of thirst within 3 days or something.
Yes.
Water treatment tablets.
That's why the first thing is you need to fill the bath and all the water containers.
You do that, and you have a big stock of water treatment tablets. So when you eventually do run out of water, you can flee to the countryside somehow.
Yes.
But you guys have obviously thought about this in far greater depth than I have.
I did a whole video on prepping.
My main line of thought has been, who do I know who lives on a farm who owns guns? And I have family who do all of that. So I would just immediately flee to them so that I could just use their guns.
So when the zombies are already running through the street, you're going to get on a bus.
Not on a Swindon. I've got a car.
Right, you're going to get in a car.
I'm going to drive through the hordes, yes. Listen, if I have the windows up, how are they going to get in?
By breaking them?
Yeah, well, if I drive through them, though, it'll be fine.
All right.
I do think that guns would be less important than, 100, 150 litre water butts, though, to keep going on about that.
Yeah, because you could just stay inside and drink.
Yeah. Well, my main thought has always been, well, if it's the zombie apocalypse as depicted in most films, that being the slow-moving zombies, as long as you wear thick enough clothing that they can't bite through it, it wouldn't actually be that difficult to just go out, with a baseball bat or a cricket bat or something, take a few out on your way to the shop, raid the shop, and then go back. That would be very easy with the slow-moving zombies.
As evidence for how much I think about the Roman Empire, I was considering getting myself some Roman armor, like replica Roman armor. So some Lorica segmentata.
So after Shad came on last week, I found the website that you use, Steel Mastery, and I'm working through my custom order for like a was it Gambon or whatever it is, the light armor.
Gambison.
Yes. I'm not sure when I'm ever going to use it, but I just like the idea of having a set of armor at home.
I feel like if S hits the fan,
yes,
I know I'm not allowed to swear. You are going to be sorted though. If you have like a suit of armor, no one's going to mess with you, are they?
And
doesn't matter who you are.
Oh, and actually, back to the point of the prepping, I do have one of the spare rooms I turned into a food hoard. So I got loads of tins of beans and chips, biscuits, and stuff like that.
Next to your gold hoard, where you've got a big pile.
No,
gold,
I don't have any gold.
Dragon.
Yeah, Scrooge McDuck giant silo full of golden coins. The thing is, I quite often think about it and then never do it. I quite often think, I really should probably hoard. I should get in lots of toilet paper and loads of tinned food, and then I never actually do it. Or I'll buy like 8 tins of soup.
Is it?
And they just sit in the cupboard, and I think it's not enough anyway.
Be the most crucial element. I mean, that was like over the pandemic, wasn't it? It was like
leaves work. Throwing that out there.
Because you just. And by the way, and maybe you'll tell it because we must let you get to your preppers thing. But I've looked. The thing you want is condensed milk. It's like the highest concentration of calories per tin or something like that. Condensed milk. So if you're having a prepper store, that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, how long is the apocalypse going to last though? Because some tins of stuff go off within a year, but some will last for
I don't believe
for like 10 years.
I don't
want
believe
that stuff, right?
I don't believe that. I think they last forever, and they just put a use by date on them because they have to.
Right, we'll have to source an incredibly old tin of beans, and Dan can test that theory on.
It's going to be the next podcast. Yeah, Dan eats old beans.
Anyway, tell us
that's
about
That's what you're following us for, isn't it?
I'm just making it up. You tell us about the prepper one, Josh.
Sure. So obviously, it's not about zombie apocalypses. It's actually focusing on more likely scenarios whereby there's some sort of natural disaster. How people have been screwed over in the States when there have been extreme weather events, things like that, or perhaps economic collapse or things along those lines where they are possible and it's worth considering. And I just talk about all the things you need to know about. It's sort of an entry level thing that I don't go into the weeds as much as I probably could.
Well, there are whole YouTube channels dedicated to it.
There are indeed.
Yeah.
I've debated starting one, just doing all the bushcraft stuff, and because I'm very much into that. But basically, what I do is I have like a bug out bag, which is like a 65 litre
I got one of those.
Thing packed full of all the stuff I'll need in the case of I need to get out of here as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So I just put that on. It's got food, water treatment tablets.
Copy of Razzle.
A copy of what?
Never mind, carry on.
Everything you could possibly need.
Right.
And I also just keep a large stock of tinned food and lots of large bottles of water. And for the most part, that's all you really need, just for sort of preempting a crisis.
Very good, very sound.
But
right,
quickly go back to the previous one.
Oh yes.
I also did this is another one I did with Bo actually. I feel like you get lucky and do all the ones that I'm very passionate about. But this was talking about the James Webb Space Telescope, and if you want anything that's going to lift your spirits about how we are actually living in a great time to be alive and how things are amazing, and look at how beautiful the universe is. This is it.
So
that
is exactly what I was thinking of when I said that you sometimes go on Netflix and you try and find a documentary, because they've got one up about the James Webb Telescope, but they just managed to make it Californian and woke and just nauseating, and I had to turn it off.
I am neither of those things, and therefore it's good. Yeah. No, we explain the images as well. We say, here's an image that we've got. This is an image of the oldest galaxy ever. It's close to being towards the age of the creation of the entire universe, and stuff like that. It's really inspiring stuff, and we do kind of wax lyrical about how amazing it is, but rightfully so. It's an achievement of humanity of our day and age that we can well and truly be proud of, I think.
Well, I think the James Webb is the best thing ever, quite literally the best thing ever created by our civilization. I wrote an article called that, and I've written a couple of other articles about it. The Edge of Forever is probably one of my favourite articles I ever wrote, if I'm going to blow my own trumpet. But it's great because I think what really matters is if you genuinely care about the topic, that just counts for so much. It just usually comes through to people watching or listening. If you genuinely are interested and care about the thing that you're talking about, And so, yeah, with your contemplations, that's
that's actually brought me onto a very important point, because actually caring about what you're talking about is very, very important, because having an interest in the world around you, lots of different interests, and I cover loads and loads of different topics in lots of different areas, but having this general interest in the world and being curious about it and finding things out and it being rewarding is one of the best ways to get meaning in your life. If you need a pick me up, start learning about something new, and that will carry you forward. Just producing this series has given me a profound amount of understanding of the world, as well as giving me lots of meaning, because you see, not to go all American Beauty on you, but you get to see the beauty in the world, don't you? You get to see how lucky we are to be here and appreciate things. And when you hear people talk about politics all the time, you don't hear that sort of thing, do you? It's all doom and gloom, everything's getting terrible. But there are other things other than politics in the world, and it's worth bearing that in mind, because also they're worth defending against the political attacks, and you've got to know what to value in your society to be able to defend it in the first place.
So what's the right-wing environmentalism one about then? Because that's another one I've spotted that I mean to look at.
Yeah, so that was me, Connor, Rory, and who else was it? I think it was, us three. And we were just talking about our connection with the environment and how the left co-opting caring about the world around you is, surrendering too much ground, quite literally. And that there is a conservative perspective on custodianship over the world around us. And I kind of invoked the biblical notion of stewardship, that it's our duty as the apex species to promote the flourishing of human life as well as non-human. Of course,
I like that framing. Right-wing people are the apex species.
So I noticed that you and Rory were on this episode. So did we finally come to a conclusion on trees versus hedgerows?
Yes, this has been a multi-year debate at this point, but this is just talking about the rural character of Britain, because there's the sort of typical southern England hedgerows delineating the boundaries of fields, and it's this managed approach, whereas I prefer wilderness. I prefer things being rugged and untouched by the human hand, and I wanted more woodland because I enjoy that more than the fields. Fields have a place, obviously agriculture as well, very, very important. But I think that we've deforested a lot of Britain, and it's a tragedy in my opinion.
Fantastic. So there's no conclusion to that just yet. You didn't come to a full stop answer.
It's a mimetic ongoing debate.
The war rages on.
Yeah.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium contents on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this episode's on the origins of the English language. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.